You ready?
Alright, and we're back. So, as you can probably read up there, the topic of this video is homosexuality. Whoa, that's an eyebrow raiser. But I feel like a lot of people want to say that homosexuality is wrong, like morally wrong, and it must therefore be a choice. So I'm here to respond to those people and give an argument for why it is impossible that can be true. The argument I'm going to be giving is I wrote something very similar for a school newspaper, and then I found out that a very similar argument was in this book, Critical Thinking, Critical Thinking by Professor Moore and Parker. And so the argument I'm going to be giving is from that book. So first premise: if homosexuality is not a choice, then it can't be wrong. Same thing with everything. Nothing can be wrong morally if it's not a choice. I don't think anyone's going to argue with this, so I'm not going to spend too much time explaining it. I took an ethics course, and it seemed pretty standard that ethicists believe that for something to be a moral transgression, it has to be an act committed by an agent. I think that's universal within ethics. But why not an example anyway, right? So take RoboCop, for example. There's a car going by. So RoboCop is a human head with a robotic body. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. So this guy's brain tells the robotic body what to do, and that's how it acts. Now suppose his body malfunctioned and went on a killing spree and killed a bunch of people. So we're not going to say that RoboCop did anything wrong. We're going to say his body malfunctioned, but we're not going to say he's a mass murderer, right? Well, I'm going to say the reason why we wouldn't say that is because he didn't decide to kill anyone. Alright, premise 2. Homosexuality is not a choice. This is the one I think everyone argues with. So here are 3 ways you can know that homosexuality is not a choice. One, the first point I'd like to make is that I didn't choose my sexuality, right? I just turned 13, and I found that girls were like really scary, and they made me sweat a lot, and it was basically just downhill from there. So it's a little weird that I would say, well, I didn't choose, but gay people did, right? So the second point we make has to do with the incentives or disincentives rather to being gay, right? So if I had chosen, I would have said to myself, well, I want to be a father, so with heterosexuality, I have a distinct advantage toward that end. And then the act of sex itself is a lot easier, isn't it? I'm not going to elaborate on that point, so don't worry. So my next point has to do with the disincentives to being gay. So there are disincentives to being gay. The most important, by far the most important one of which is in our epoch, you'd have to be crazy to be gay. There's so much heterosexism, and people always say that's so gay. To me, it's a bad thing or something like that, right? So really, no one's going to choose to be gay. A better example of this is sort of what went on in the 1950s when homosexuality was viewed as like a mental disorder, right? And it's not, right? That's a good point to be made on the side. People want to equate homosexuality with pedophilia, bestiality, and polygamy, right? That's not a fair they don't give arguments for this, but that's not a fair fair view at all. There's an obvious difference between two adult minds, or an adult mind and a child's mind, and an adult's mind and an animal's mind, and definitely jealousy is going to prevent any sort of erotic love from happening between more than two people. So so if someone felt like they could argue for that point, which they can't, then I would make an argument of what I just said and cut them off at the knees, basically. But right, so in the 1950s, homosexuality was viewed as a mental disorder. So I think the standard protocol was for a homosexual male was to be castrated, medicated, and institutionalized for life, right? So that's a pretty obvious disincentive. So, like I said, as in this time and in that time, you'd have to be crazy to choose to be gay. No one's choosing to be gay. Finally, it's just a little weird to talk about being talk about choosing a preference in general, right? So I didn't choose my preference for root beer over Coke, right? It just sort of happened that way, didn't it? So it's a little. So how are you going to argue that maybe homosexuality is the one exception to choosing a preference? Every other preference just sort of comes naturally, but then homosexuality is the preference, the sexual preference that you get to choose. It's a little weird, and at the end of the day, it just doesn't work. So that's all I really wanted to say.